order. And I'd like to thank Counselor Jordan, Counselor Ocasio, Counselor Sullivan for being here tonight. And our first item of business is the minutes of the February 12th, 2024 meeting. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about the minutes? Oh, before we start too, since I don't see cocaine there, but I should do this in case she does go online here. Motion to take a roll call vote that would, for the purposes of this meeting, would be applicable to all motions to remove an item from the table, place items on the table, package items, or suspend the rules unless there is an objection.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Motion to approve the minutes of February 12th.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, so moved, thank you. Chief Katalevitz, I see that you're on Zoom, so it's your item 2, order that in accordance with the Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, the City Council hereby accepts the provision of the Mass Department of Fire Services firefighter equipment grant for $17,245.53, no match. So can you talk to us about that one?
This is a grant that's given out yearly. There's one more year, I believe, that's been approved for this grant. This gives us funding to buy different kinds of equipment based on what's considered like a high priority need within the state. With this grant, this time we're going to be purchasing 8 Class 3 rescue harnesses. That'll bring us up to compliance with our tech rescue and rope rescue. We're going to be getting an additional 2 sets of ballistic gear for the active shooter requirement, and we're going to be buying 4 NFPA compliant thermal imaging cameras.
Okay, and how many cameras did you say?
4.
4, okay. Okay, does anybody have any questions?
Nope. I'll make a motion to be approved.
So, second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. You guys have a great evening.
You too, thank you very much. Okay, this one here is item 3, that in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, the City Council hereby accepts the provision of the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources spending bill earmarked $90,000, no match. If I can hear a motion to take it off the table for discussion?
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Eric Velez, who is the Animal Control Officer, was called away on emergency, family emergency to Puerto Rico, but I did talk to him, and he was hoping that we could pass this tonight. And if you look at your, the scope of services that's in your packet, you'll see that the $90,000 in operating funds is appropriated through the Mass Department of Agriculture to the City of Holyoke Animal Control Department. The contractor aims to enhance compliance with animal control regulations in Holyoke while improving animal welfare and mitigating related nuisances. They plan to expand the animal control services and educational outreach, partnering with the organizations for disease clinics and to spay and neuter services. Funding shall support advertisement in English and Spanish, reaching the Device Holyoke population. Additionally, they aim to strengthen infrastructure with a new freezer, upgraded vehicle, and imitation predators in high usage areas. And I did speak with Eric, and I don't know how many of you know Eric. He's been the animal control officer for many years, and he does a great job. And I think this grant of $90,000 with no match will be a great asset to that department. So I would like to try to pass it tonight if we could.
Let's see here.
This is the best page to,
Yeah, and then I see there's a money breakdown.
yeah.
Most of this looks good, Madam Chair. I guess the only thing I was wondering what they mean by vehicle
Well,
changes, because we just gave them a new vehicle.
I'm assuming, I don't know if the auditor can help us with that or the mayor, but I know that Eric does have a new vehicle, but wasn't that, if I recall speaking to him when he got the vehicle, they had to get a different vehicle because that one, I guess you couldn't put the animals back there or something. The mayor maybe could address that. whoever.
I did see a line in here, maybe this is what he means, Madam Chair. It looks like there's some equipment to put on the new vehicle, so maybe it's not for, obviously, the vehicle itself, but
But
for
the
the equipment
equipment.
for the vehicle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
So some-
and it's certainly a good truck, and I don't know what he used before, but it's very up to date and modern.
Maybe we can ask the mayor, he's got it he's using the truck and that's going well?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Make a motion to be approved?
Any second? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, all righty. So the next one is item number 4 and item number 5, I think, are together. Mayor, is everybody here that you need to be here on?
Yes.
Okay,
Jane's online?
you're welcome to come and sit here if you'd like. Jane is on.
She's on? Okay.
Yep. School department?
Not sure.
Is Sean Mangano, is he from the school department? Yes. Okay, I thought so, okay. And I'd like to welcome Counselor Givner and Counselor Vacan as well. So, thank you, everybody. Thank you. Okay, this is the bank at the corner.
Right.
Okay, and what I'll do is I'll read this while you're
Thank
getting ready. This is an order that is hereby appropriated by transfer in fiscal year 2024, $850,000, and it has several items that it's taken from: school roof projects, DPW highway construction, design and connector road, police station, property demolition project, fire station. I don't know if you want me to read the amounts. I'm happy to do that if you wish. Mosier Street CSO, $96,000. Community Field, $44,000. Appleton Street Sewer Separation, $1,500. Flood Control Levy Certification, $600. Parking Garage Reconstruction, $16,000. Dean Volk Science Lab, $156,000. Fire Trucks, $20,000. Sewer Plant Improvements, $7,300. Sale of Real Estate, $303,000. And Capital Stabilization, $145,000. To Capital Outlay School Buildings, $850,000. So can I hear a motion to take this one up?
So moved.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we want to take up item 5 as well?
Sure.
Okay, and a motion to take up item 5,
Second.
which is, all those in favor?
Aye.
This is, I believe, to purchase the building that you just gave us this?
Yep, 217, 225 High Street.
Okay, all right, so who would like to go first?
Thank you so much, Counselor. I have here the team of folks that have been working on this for a while. We got, everyone remembers Margaret Wood from Answer.
Hi.
You know, Superintendent Soto, Rory, our city treasurer has been extremely helpful. Jane, from our legal department, who's online, trying to help us navigate the legalese behind what we're calling a friendly taking of 217 to 225 High. Are we gonna have the presentation put up?
I'm working with Jeffrey right now to get that.
And Merritt, that's the building at the corner of Dwight and High Street?
Yep, so, well, as soon as we get this presentation up, you'll see a nice picture. I don't want to go ahead of myself, so that the people at home can see what we're looking at. Okay, I see it coming. So while Rory gets there, yes, we're talking about 217, 225 High, which is the old Bank Trust building. Built in 1898, has been there in our city's downtown for a very long time in our city's history. And, you know, just to walk you through a little bit, obviously, way before I ever been here, I know there's been conversations about the lease downtown. There's been conversations about getting our school department out of that lease and into a new space. So this here is just high-level profile. As we get into this presentation, we're going to get into, you'll hear a little bit about some site comparison analysis that was done and why this site specifically was chosen. We're also going to get into existing conditions and as well as the future needs of this current building. Margaret will talk a little bit about the fit plan, some potential floor plans that we're able to scrape together, and then at the very end we can dive right into the funding strategy. But as far as this building is concerned, right across from our city hall in our downtown has a new roof, fire suppression system. There's a estimated value here in this project to save the city roughly $222,000, and we can get more into the details on that. But just know that this project, there are many moving parts or components on why this site was selected that we're going to get into, but one major factor here, which has been a driving force of the conversations in the past, has been eliminating this lease. But we're talking about potentially eliminating two leases, not only the Suffolk Street lease, but also our Transition Academy's lease that's currently at Open Square. They're both currently at a month-to-month, so there's some risk at its present state of what month-to-month happens, of potential cost increases if we decide to stay in the existing locations. So you see the building. If you go to the next slide, there you are. There's right connected to this building is a 2-floor story, and just know that this is one project. They both share an elevator. That's the building where we want to put in the Transition Academy, and Anthony Soto is going to talk a little bit about that program just to give you an idea of what Transition Academy is. But not too long ago, when this building was renovated, it was made fully ADA compliance, which is appropriate for when you hear about the Transition Academy program that we have down at the Open Square. Go ahead, Anthony. This is your slide.
Yeah, so the Transition Academy currently serves about 28 students.
How many? I didn't hear you.
28.
28, thank you.
Yeah, we're projecting for next year for it to be closer to 36 students, and these are students that we're actually helping transition into an emergent adult role. So, we have partnerships across the city with different businesses to create opportunities for these students to get some real work experience. In some cases, they learn how to do laundry, they learn how to cook for themselves. Currently some of the partnerships that we have are, like the graphics, the graphic arts program that's down by Ray Street. They help print and learn how to print T-shirts and print different things and support that. So it's a really good experience. If we didn't have this program, we would actually have to, I think Westfield has a program, Springfield has a program. We would be paying tuition for these students to go out of district and get that till they age out at the age of 22. So it's a really nice program. Currently, they're out of Open Square, and as the mayor alluded, we're on a month-to-month lease. They're kind of outgrowing that space a little bit, and this would help solve that issue as well. The lease for that, I know the mayor mentioned it was month-to-month. The central office lease is month-to-month, but that current lease is a 3-year lease, and it's up, I believe, at the end of December. So we had gone out to bid to try to find spaces in the downtown area for that program to live, and that was the awarding bid. So we would be looking to, if this plan were to fall through, we would be looking to go out to bid again to find a space for that program.
Okay. Just to interrupt you for a second, would you have to break the lease that you have, the 3-year lease that's up in December? Would that be a problem?
I don't think that would be a problem. Like, if this were to go through, that would probably be the most immediate need, is to renovate that space for that program. You know, they need a kitchen, they need, you know, a washer dryer hookup, like hook it up for classroom space. But if that were the case, I would imagine that the existing landlord would allow us to move to a month-to-month lease until we were able to move the program over to 225 High.
Okay, thank you.
And so now Margaret's going to go over, you know, the floor plans, or what they're calling the fit plan. And then after that, you know, we want to kind of share a little bit on the comparisons, the different sites we looked at. And this conversation started with just looking at downtown, and I mean, the central, the district office. But, you know, when we came across this site, the maximum potential of, you know, positive kickback for the city. And we'll go also a little bit into the cons, because we looked at you know, here's what's great about this site compared to all these other sites and what it can do for us now and into the future, but obviously being realistic with what we're looking at with the site, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. But Margaret, if you can just go over the fit plan.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I don't know if this is going to work so well for people on the screen. Well, first of all, let me kind of reintroduce myself. So I'm Margaret Wood. I'm an owner's project manager, although for the first more than half of my life I worked as an architect, so I'm sort of serving both purposes here to some extent. So I'm working on the Peck Middle School project, and our office also has a house doctor contract with the city, and we're working on some of the ARPA-funded municipal renovations. And so when this came up, the mayor asked me if, as part of the house doctor contract, I could spend a little time looking at this with him and with Anthony's staff and kind of figure out what this would look like. So these are my working sketches, okay? They're not finished drawings, and you can see my notes on them in red where I've sort of called out certain things. So what I did, and I'm going to get up and point for the...
Just make sure you're talking to the microphone.
You can move one of the mics from the desk and talk to that,
You turned that one on right
Yeah.
there, Margaret.
and just push the button so the green light shows up.
All right, there we go. How's that?
As long as the
All right.
green light's on, it should be okay.
Okay, so you guys are lucky because you have plans, but just to kind of reiterate, this plan, which is the ground level plan, kind of shows the footprint of both buildings. And actually, the footprint of the tall building and the footprint of the short building are exactly the same dimensionally. So this piece is a 2-story building. This piece is a 6-story building.
Where's High Street in terms of as a reference?
High Street is here,
Okay,
okay? And City Hall is here.
okay.
Okay. So this was a bank. It was built as a bank in 1898. And if you remember it, it had a beautiful banking hall, 2-story banking hall inside. So we think that this is a really good place for, if it became the district headquarters, it's the Family Engagement Center. It's where it would work, like 57 Suffolk does now, which is you come there and there's a sort of multi-service arrangement where you can sort of come and you can get help with transportation and registration and, you know, all those things. So we're leaving, this sketch would leave this as a sort of open floor with a control point. On each floor, you can see where there were handicapped accessible bathrooms, you know, back to the mayor's reference. So in 2002, the building had, you know, a pretty significant renovation that introduced handicapped bathrooms all through the building. So there are bathrooms back here. There's open space to make some enclosed conference rooms, but the control point is here. This piece, which would be transitions, needs some renovations at the front to kind of open it up, but it has a ground floor entry, big open space. It has an existing kitchen at the back, which would need to be enlarged because transitions actually has a really important function of their program is teaching the students how to cook. But there is all the plumbing and sort of fit out for the kitchen here. They would need some additional bathrooms because there's only 2 units here. But that's kind of the layout. When this piece was built in the 30s, the 2 buildings do connect right now, but we would, I think, close that off. So that's the first floor. Rory, can we see the next floor? This one's a little harder to read. So this is the upper floor of the banking hall, which is an occupied space. But this is the upper floor of this is the floor that's above transitions, and it's sort of L-shaped, the shape of the space. Right now, this space is not fully accessible and would probably need to be used as private space. So I haven't made any attempt in this effort to program it. You could introduce a lift or something else into this area, or you could make renovations here to allow the elevator to provide access to the upper floor of this building. We go up one more floor. So this is where you start to see me. All the colored stuff is me. This is kind of me working my way through the program of the school department, and with very little input from Anthony and his team, I will say, doing what we call sometimes a fit plan, which is a check on whether there are sufficient offices of the right size in order to fit the school department in. So this floor is Office of Pupil Services in this diagram, which the Office of Pupil Services works really closely with the family engagement folks on the ground floor, so that's why I sort of decanted them here. And you can sort of see I've made some attempt to make notes about, certain items you'd have to look at. The back of each floor has some spaces which can be conference rooms and or like a kitchen sort of place for folks to take a lunch break. And again, each floor has bathrooms because of the 2002 renovation. So next floor. This floor, again, this is Margaret's redesigning the school department. This I was proposing would be the superintendent and academics group. And you can kind of see how it lays out. I mean, there's a sort of, one thing about this building is it was all laid out as offices. So it's sort of pretty easy to sort of decant the school department. And again, there's a break room, there's a conference room, there's a copy room. One more floor. This is, I think now we're on the 5th floor. So, and again, Margaret's program, this is the finance and data group. And again, you can sort of see the numbers of people and, approximately where they are. Again, space at the back for meetings. And then the top floor, 6th floor, this would be human resources. Now, I will say, this corner space has the best view of Holyoke you've ever seen. In fact, the mayor's, he and I were comparing our pictures of it, because you can imagine at this point you're up on the top floor looking right across the street at City Hall. So I could imagine a version of this in which that space is not the director of HR, but is actually, the director of HR might be somewhere else on this floor, but that space might be like a special space that was used for other kinds of meetings, other kinds of opportunities to show the city off to folks. So I'm going to stop and ask if that makes sense, and if people have any questions. Again, this is not what you would do. In the next step here, if the city decided to proceed, you'd actually really do this with a sort of very integrated effort with the school department. This is me, having worked with the school department for a few years, taking the list of who they have. They have about 58 employees, correct, Anthony?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is based on sort of fitting those 58 employees into this building and not really touching the basement floor, which is sort of a warren of storage spaces, which could be used for a lot of the sort of private storage and protected storage, secure storage that several of the departments need, which isn't accommodated on these floors. So I didn't really dig into that because it's kind of like a given that there's tons of storage space down there. So questions?
Space, floors?
I just have a comment, if I could. This is very good, especially I think Councilor Jordan and maybe a couple other councilors will remember the late Dick Welch, who used to call 57 Suffolk Street the Taj Mahal. So I think the fact that this may go through is making him very happy, I can tell you, if he's listening. But thank you for the presentation. It's very good.
Oh, we're still not done, but if there was any questions on the floor plans.
Right, I understand. I just wanted to mention, because he believed me.
Dick Welch is smiling.
Oh, you, yeah. Yeah, so any questions to anybody?
In terms of the square footage that you have today, well, how does this compare?
It's a little more square footage. If you recall back in 2016, I don't know if Margaret has the actual square footage of what we're renting versus what this would be. We were essentially, we had a similar floor plan in 2016. And, one of my first meetings with the city council, which was a little bit of a culture shock to me, was like, hey, transportation ended up getting cut $1 million that I had to figure out. And then in the budget hearings, like the lease costs, the lease for central office was also cut with a charge to like figure out a solution. So I myself I put a task force together. Mr. Todd McGee was on the task force. We had a school committee on the task force. Rory was on the task force. Whitney Anderson was on the task force. And we hired an architect to go through and analyze a few different options. We looked at Lynch at the time. We looked at central office at the time. We looked at the time when we were thinking about building new schools at Lawrence and Peck, we looked at what it would cost to renovate Lawrence to turn it into office space if that plan were to go through. And the recommendation of that task force at the time to the city council was, here are 8 options, and in the meantime, instead of renting 5 floors at the time, we consolidated that, which included the basement. Part of this was a learning experience to me. I was new to the role, and I didn't know what exactly made up our lease costs. We were at the time renting the basement and using it as storage, and we were renting the 4th and 5th floor and the 1st floor. We ended up consolidating to the 3rd floor and the 1st floor only, and we took a lot of stuff out of the basement, sent it to Central Supply, and ended up cutting the lease in half. And the recommendation at the time was to purchase 57 Suffolk because it was by far the most cost-effective option in comparison to renovating Lynch, renovating Central Supply, and all the other options that we looked at. That in turn, was like, okay, thank you, but something has to come out of room 1 in order for us as a city, as a body, to take action, and that just didn't happen. So at that time, that's what we were recommending. Like the return on investment would have been pretty quick because our lease at the time was about $320,000 a year. So you factor that cost every single year, it would have paid itself off pretty quickly.
Do you know the square foot of where you are currently?
I don't have the fair square footage.
I pulled it up for you though.
Is your light on there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry. And this is from the presentation that was given in 2017. So that's what I used to get this, and it's, I'm sure, somewhere in the archives. But at the time, the consolidation that Anthony just spoke of took it from 23,000 square feet down to 11,148 square feet of actual office space. And when we talk about the amount of space here that Margaret mentioned, when we look at the actual offices, even though they're spread out over more floors than currently exist at 57 Suffolk Street, when you look at each floor, the size of each floor, it's actually larger per floor at 57 Suffolk Street than it is what we'd be talking about here. So it's comparable, just spread out over more floors. And then the transition space alone that we talked about is about 8,300 square feet.
At Open Square.
And what we'd be talking about here. Yeah, it's at Open Square.
I don't have the square footage of that on me, but if that's something we can certainly,
Yeah, I was just.
we can pull the
giving
lease. to see how
Illustration
much-
of what it would be across the street here. But yeah, so it's comparable because we were talking about, it's about 11,000 square feet of office space. We're looking to purchase another, 8,300 square feet of space for Transitions Academy, and then there's that floor above Transitions Academy that could be, the mayor's mentioned maybe a better conference room for city employees, for meetings. It could be a place for, subcommittee meetings or whatnot. It could be, another place where, public meetings could be held. That's not.
So just so I have the facts correct, you're saying that you're currently on 2 floors using 11,000 square feet currently. This building on 6 floors is 11,000 square feet. That transitions, you don't know how much you're using today, but the first floor of 217 or 225, whatever it is, 217 it would be, I believe, that is 8,300 square feet. And the second floor would be another comparable 8,300 square feet, but that would be add-on.
It's in that neighborhood. I apologize, because I have all the net areas, not the gross areas. Oh. I have the net areas, not the gross areas, and I think you're looking for the gross. I was thinking about it as a net, because I was trying to make sure that we were doing an apples-to-apples comparison of office space, not including circulation space, stairs and elevators. So, one thing about this building.
You're including bathrooms, common rooms, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I was
Okay.
just looking at the net.
All right.
And the comparison of the net, I can give you. So the comparison of the net is at 57 Suffolk. The net is about 8,200 square feet of net.
Okay.
And at High Street, and this includes that second floor area that isn't programmed, but does not include transitions, it's about 14,000.
This is the 6 floors.
The 6 floors, right. And then the net for transitions,
Which is the first
kept
floor.
out, right.
Okay, so the second floor would not be counted, but it's approximately another,
It is counted in that 14. but
both
it's not-
floors of the other building.
Yeah, so it's the.
6 floors plus
6
2.
floors of the tall building.
Yeah.
And the second floor of the short building. Because the second floor of the short building isn't transition space, only.
And
the
that'll be
first
part of school department offices,
It could-
theoretically.
It could be, yeah, it could be, it wouldn't be part of transitions,
Okay.
it would be city office space.
And then transitions is 8,200.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So there's 22,000 square feet total.
Yep, I didn't do the gross calculation, I apologize, Gavin.
No,
I
I'm just
can- I-
speaking of the net.
Yeah,
Okay, 22,000, all right. So roughly double the space you have today. Okay.
Yeah, the other thing that I'll mention is because, as part of consolidating like we did, we've had to, build out, like, spread people out across the district, right? So one of the spaces right now that, for example, the graphic arts shop, it's not a shop anymore. We used to have printing presses in there, and we used to run a shop. We've had to convert that into like makeshift office space to create space for particularly a lot of our special education itinerant staff that would normally be housed with the special education team, but because there's just no space. Like, people are, when we had the amount of space that we had, like, there were some directors that had offices, and we, right now we call it the fishbowl, right? We have like 5 directors sitting in a room, and they go there. It's hard to collaborate. Like they all have to wear headsets, because if one of them's on a meeting and another one's on a separate meeting, it's like it's really hard to concentrate. Some of them will even take calls in the hallway on the stairs because of that. So, I'm not complaining. I just want to give you a clear picture of what we're doing right now. Ideally, like, we wouldn't be in that scenario, but we're going to make do with whatever we can.
Okay. Counselor Sullivan? Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Where I'd like to start, first of all, the renovation costs, the estimated renovation costs, like on 57 Suffolk Street, for example. Where did that $18 million number come from?
Yeah, so let me talk about where these came from. So, because Mike's gone right to the slide very sensibly. As part of this process, we compared 3 different sites. So 57 Suffolk, which is where the district is now, but transitions is elsewhere. Metcalf, which is a city-owned school that could, in the future, after PEC is completed and there's sort of the district resorts, could end up vacant. And then 217 to 225 High Street. So, the question became how to kind of equitably sort of represent the cost of construction to you. And I looked at a bunch of comparable building renovations of buildings of this age. Now, these 3 buildings have different issues. Like, one's got one set of issues, the other's got another set of issues. But in general, what I did was I used $325 a square foot for the simpler renovation projects, which I would call Metcalf in that category. Because it's right now, it's a fully functional building that has all the pieces, but needs a lot of partitions and mechanical upgrades in order to sort of turn it into space that has private offices. For 57 Suffolk and for the bank building, let's call it 217 to 225 High, I used $400 a square foot. Now, those may sound like crazy numbers, but we've recently done a building which is of the same age in Boston. And the project was estimated and bid in 2019. And that project was about $400 a square foot. So understanding this isn't Boston and understanding we don't have a scope, the thing that was important to me was to sort of apply a sort of transparent number so that you were getting a sense of comparables between the 3 projects.
I've got that. So Metcalf was how many square feet?
So Metcalf, the number that I used for Metcalf, the gross square footage was 26,000 square feet. And for that one, I used $325 a square foot. Let me know when you're ready for the next one.
Yep.
57 Suffolk is a very big building. It's got the biggest footprint of all. So the total square footage of that building is just under 46,000, so it's 45,900. And for that one, I used the 400 a square foot. And that's because we know about that one that it needs a new mechanical system, that it needs a new elevator, it's got, a whole bunch more issues. 225 High Street, by comparison, the gross area of the building, and I'm going to leave, what I did here was the number that's in the assessor's books is 31,339, but I'm assuming that we're not going to touch the basement as part of this. So I took the basement out of that, which is 4,410. So I used 26,000, well, let's call it 27,000 gross square feet, and I applied $400 a square foot. Now, in some ways, I know the most about 217, 225 High Street because I spent the most time looking at it. But as the mayor commented when we started, it has a new roof. It has, all the accessible bathrooms that the other facilities don't have. What it really needs, and it has sprinklers, it's fully sprinklered. What it really needs is a pretty full mechanical and electrical upgrade, like pretty much from scratch. Yeah, but it is also vacant. So I will also say there's a value associated with trying to do, like if you were trying to do this kind of work at 57 Suffolk, it would take you longer and it would probably cost more because you were trying to renovate it.
Okay.
Existing
So,
building.
Anthony, how many square feet do we actually use at Suffolk Street right now?
11,000.
11,000.
So we're only using 11,000, but we're basing the renovation cost on 46,000. Why would we fix up 46,000?
You're talking about 57 Suffolk.
Yeah.
So again, I was assuming that the city would, the question is, would the city buy, for comparison, 57 Suffolk, right? As they would, in this case, proposing to buy 217 to 225. And then you're right, Mike, you might not renovate the whole thing, but again, just to sort of compare the level of capital improvement the city was taking on, because 57 Suffolk is it's the biggest building of the bunch. That's what's really driving the cost.
And to add to that, the 217, 225 is a friendly taking. If we were to go forward with Suffolk, might not necessarily be a friendly taking.
Oh, yeah, I get that. Anything we do there would be really leasehold improvement. There'd be no benefit for us.
That's right,
All right.
exactly.
And then, and my immediate thought too, like Metcalf, despite what people think, my immediate thought was, hey, we Metcalf own it, we don't got to buy it, we should just go up there. But there was when I did call each of the counselors up, letting them know, and I've heard comments about we need to make sure we keep this thing downtown, and then also like the transition academy, there's no space at Metcalf, so we'll still have that lease. But worst case scenario, just so that you're aware, we do have that building to us. If we were to go forward with 217 to 25 high, there's other need for the Metcalf building, whether if it's expanding pre-K or putting in there some other, I think Anthony Soto had some other program in mind. But either way, like that, each one of these, like Margaret alluded to earlier, has its pros and cons. And, after having these conversations and looking at these, it just seemed like 217, 220 was the best fit. Not necessarily to say that's the grand option here, but it was the best fit between all of them.
I got that. I think Anthony wants to.
Anthony, go ahead.
interject.
Yeah, we haven't talked about this, but I do want to name that, like, we have a new landlord that purchased the building.
Who's that?
Eric Shore.
Eric Schur.
Oh, Eric, sure.
We've certainly seen like a decline in the upkeep of that building. Our elevator was broken since March of last year. Like, we didn't have an elevator for almost a year. And, it was challenging. Like, there was, we have some staff that are like, that literally we had to move to the first floor and like rearrange people because they couldn't get up. But the one thing that I want to name is that, Appleton, and the building was a little better kept when Appleton was there, because they were actually tenants there. They owned the building, and, they could see the building. They were a little more, present in what's going on. He has also expressed that, like, we are paying like well below market value, which is like hinting to me that, he's going to be increasing our rent, or at least, having that conversation. So he kind of kept us wherever Appleton had us, and Appleton hadn't touched the rent per square foot or any of that. But like, he's definitely, now that he's owned the building for a year, he's already mentioned to me twice, like, hey, like, look, this building is not in good shape at all, and I want to renovate it, but like, your rent is going to go up. So I think he's done some work in the DCF building that they have, and he's done some good. He wants to show like what the possibilities are, but I think behind that is like there's going to be an increase in rent, which should be factored into the comparison of these costs. the fact that we have our net school spending dollar amount, and then the city always has to kick in addition to that, any leases that are greater than 3 years old, those costs.
I've got the Suffolk Street and Metcalf piece of that question answered. So my next one would be, where is the 10.7 million for renovation going to come from if we buy this building?
Yeah, so that 10 million, and feel free to jump in anytime, everybody. But just so you know, I mean, it's not 10,700,000 the day we move in. We're talking about 10,700,000 spread out through the course of 10 years, and we have to take a deeper dive in what that looks like. It is a historic building. There are a combination of alternate revenue sources we can tap into to potentially make those investments through the course of, let's say, if we go with 10 years. Whether if it's CPA, we did build up some ARPA revenue interest. We've had conversations about potentially investing as a jump-off point among other sources that we can, work together and explore throughout the years as we go forward with the high need on year one, and then, what are some of those things that we can take care of up to year 10.
Well, that'd be one of my prime concerns, because without even
and
factoring.
Mind you, there's 222,000 off the rip that we can potentially,
Well, they're not really, because we lose $64,000 in real estate
Right.
tax. So the real budgetary savings, what I'm seeing here, is 158,000,
right.
not 222. If I take the 100, well, I did it with 157.
What's the operational cost difference? Oh, we haven't even gotten into that yet.
Yeah.
I think that would be in.
Yeah, the difference there is like, if we were to own that space, we would just include the utilities in our, right now, we pay, that's included as part of the rent.
Your utilities are included today.
That's
all in.
we pay a set all in. There's no additional costs into that. If we were to own, like if the city were to own that space, we would be able to just build in the utility expenses. We probably would have to hire a custodian to manage the building and do all that. But like, that would be on the school department side of the house. It wouldn't be like the city giving the school department extra money above net school spending. We would build that into our operating budget, because that would be an eligible expense towards net school spending. Whereas, the rent right now is not.
And to your point, Counselor, and it is an investment, and it's going to require all of us to be strategic throughout the course of the years. But also, let's say we do nothing, we're talking about a potential rent increase. We still have these leases. We're currently at the 222,000. I don't know what that rent can potentially be. And so then we're, kind of back to square one, you know what I mean? So it's one of this whole thing is one of those, like, there's takeaways, there's good, and there's the reality of it, right? And it's just a matter of preference and, what minefield you want to go forward with.
Yeah, well, I get all that part, but if we're going to spread out this 10.7 million over an unknown number of years, right? But just out of the starting gate, if you had a 0% bond, which I don't think exists, but, and over 30 years, you're looking at $360,000 a year. So if you say you're only going to do so much and you're going to spread it out, you're still looking at $180,000 a year, cutting it in half for $157,000 savings.
And to your point, I think these are all conservative numbers. She's just using these rough estimates, comparisons.
Yeah.
And for all we know, it probably doesn't need that much, that high of a cost. But again, there are unknowns. But to your point, there's a lot of creative ways that we can go forward and make it palatable at minimum. Yeah.
All right, so Margaret, well, let me go back. Right now, and what about, now we're going to take
Raise your hand.
No,
three other
I do have questions.
existing facilities, right? Or two others. And where's all the parking going to go for all the people and all the participants in all these other programs and stuff?
Yep. Nope. That's another great question. I mean, just back of the envelope here, we do have the Dwight Street parking garage, which is going to be another conversation. There are plans that we're looking at to potentially tackle the issues. We are rethinking downtown parking in general with the high-end Maple Street project. There are two. Actually, March 7 is the presentation of the draft report of the downtown parking management study the council supported. And so we're hoping to take the result of that, and as we go forward, working with MassDOT with the high-end Maple infrastructure upgrade project, where we can like tackle like a MassWorks, for example, and fix and implement the parking strategies, which includes improving our parking lots, our little lots that we have around the city, maybe even creating some new spaces where we can, and then also fixing Dwight Street. Potentially, and this is all just conversational, potentially building up, where Suffolk is, but I think there's like 300 spaces in the Dwight Street garage, if I'm not mistaken. And you're talking about 51 or 56 employees. So we can certainly absorb that, coupled with other folks that are using like the health center and the DCF office folks. There's more parking spaces in there.
So in the timing of putting people and programs into this building and getting the parking problem we already know exists over here, we can get both of those accomplished in time to meet the goals here?
We fit 51 new parking spaces right now if this was to start next month. Like, there's plenty of space in there for employees to park in if they were to move into the Suffolk Street, into the High Street building tomorrow. But obviously, like I said, it's the parking garage situation is another project that we'll be having a conversation, I think, very soon. I think by your next council meeting, it should be moved to committee. Oh, no, actually, we tabled it for a moment, and we're continuing to evaluate it. But in the short term, yeah, they can go right in there. It fits. It's not falling down, despite how the news made it sound. But, obviously, we're going to be figuring out how to make investments in there so that it's structurally safe.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just two more quick questions. So it's full fire protection system, the sprinkler system. Was that inspected by the Holyoke Fire Department? That it's all current code and not something, has changed in the last 20 years, so.
It's newer, it's definitely not 20 years old. I would say it's 4 to 5 years old.
Yeah.
The short answer is, Mike, it hasn't been inspected.
Microphone.
Good. Oh, sorry. It hasn't been inspected, but that's a good idea. We should have them come in and take a look at it.
And we can provide all of the building records. What's really been nice about this particular building is there's been a number of Margaret touched on the large renovation from 2002, but all the way up until the roof that was just installed, I guess it's a couple of years ago now, in 22. It was all permitted work, it was all inspected work. There was, because of the MassDOT project that took place there, where there was actually issue, nothing structural with the building and nothing about the building owner, but the contractors that the state had hired to do the work, the street work on Dwight Street, they actually damaged some of the sidewalks around there, and they had to go down into the vaults underneath to do some repair work. So all of that is permitted work. We've got all the building records. So unlike other buildings you might be looking at, we were able to say, okay, let's just take all the building records and hand them over to the experts, and they've been able to take a look and review all of them. And some of that repair work actually had to do with the fire suppression system. So it was
Yeah, that's right.
recently reviewed and signed off. I couldn't give it to you this second, but we could provide it to the council anytime.
That's on it. It says good structural condition, but I get it with the new roof and all these other things, but who went through, checking the mortar, the rest of the plumbing systems, the sewer connections, the water mains, all of that stuff?
So we haven't looked at all of those things. The Fuss and O'Neill did a report, which is a few years old, that looked at the whole building. I can't remember. It was before my time.
There were some different reports, and again, so prior to them leaving, Chris Baker was part of this conversation, and Chris Baker was very much involved because of the oversight with the TOD project with MassDOT, and so he said structurally this building is sound. There actually had been some issues with some of the mortar that had been identified by the building department a few years back. And again, it was corrected, and those corrective plans were submitted to the building department, stamped architectural drawings, and all of that work was approved. So it's not just we feel it's good. We have engineers that have reviewed it, felt it was good, and then we have documentation to back that all up. Because quite honestly, one of the very first questions when this came about, because when the mayor heard that it may be coming to market and heard some of the stuff, he asked Anthony and myself, because we both had been involved with the previous conversation about central office and what would it be, and it was really like, well, does this building even make sense? So we had done some due diligence before we even brought Margaret and her team on to do this further analysis. And again, we can provide all of that documentation to the council.
And also, Counselor, the current owner was doing their own, they've done a lot of work into the building too, throughout the last few short years. And also a lot of work in that where we want to put the transition academy, and they're actually getting it ready for Hope for Holyoke to move right in until we stepped in and said, hey, we want to do a friendly taking and buy this property. So in that process, I would imagine there were permits pulled in the renovations, and if there weren't, we're gonna have some problems.
Yeah.
I guess to Rory's point is in that process, as these things were done, right? You have folks that looked at it and approved accordingly and inspected of whether it's the fire suppression system that was done 4 or 5 years ago, or the renovations in that space that there was some look at, but nothing deep dive thorough, though, to your point.
Okay.
Okay. I just have a couple comments or concerns. At 57 Suffolk Street, you had said the owner, how long did it take the owner to fix the elevator? Approximately.
I would say March of last year is when it went down, and it got fixed maybe a month and a half ago, so
Okay.
almost a year.
Okay. And according to this, it needs a new roof. The elevator's all set. But you have no guarantees that the owner can raise your rent, because you're a month-to-month tenant, correct? Without doing these improvements. You have no guarantee that he'll do those. He could raise it, even if you had a new roof.
Right.
He could raise your rent.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
And just to the defense of, I don't want to make it sound like he was negligent in fixing elevators. He did make a comment really quickly at an event we were at. He was like, I know I got to fix the elevator. Something about the pieces. It's taken us a long time to fix the War Memorial elevator. So, I could understand that there might have been some complexity behind moving as quickly as we'd all like.
Yeah.
I don't want to make, just for the record, don't want to make it sound like he
Yeah.
didn't
Well,
want
that's
to
why
or he was
I was
negligent.
referring to the owner rather than the name of the owner.
Yeah. So.
Counselor Jordan?
Yeah, thank you. I assume at some point we're going to get into the whole purchase and due diligence process at some point here. I do have some questions relative to that, but staying with the sort of some of these hard costs, relocation expense. You would have a relocation expense of some form, I would assume, associated with moving over there. What are those numbers?
Yeah, I think Margaret, the number that is there, we were hoping would be able to absorb some of the soft costs, but I don't think that
The short answer is, Kevin, we haven't looked at this. I tried to do this as a straight hard cost number because the soft costs would be similar conceptually for each of them. So I was sort of trying to identify that the.
But if you're already in 57 Suffolk, you wouldn't have a relocation expense.
You would probably not have much of a relocation expense, but you would have other impacts, which are that you would be trying to install a new mechanical system in an occupied building. So you'd probably be moving people around. The costs would probably be more productivity than they would be strict cost.
Okay.
But all of those things become like a lot more fiddly to compare.
Okay.
I think one next step would be to really sort of outline all of those. But, another next step is to get into more detail as opposed to, I think at this level, using a square foot cost for comparison is a good way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But if the city really wants to proceed with one of these options, any one of them,
Mm-hmm.
the next step would be to sort of spend more time and money and sort of digging into them and digging into the soft costs. So.
Obviously, we're asked here to evaluate proposals and to vote for things. I need all the information.
100%.
Right, I have my due diligence, as you can imagine, just
Yeah.
like as you did your due diligence. I'm assuming any other presentations that the group relied on will be shared with the council, the 2017 former presentation, copies of the building inspection report for the proposed target site. That'll be shared with us at some point. I
Yeah,
would hope.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I do agree that the city's got very good records on this building.
That's good. That's good. We'll certainly take a look into, roll up our sleeves and look into those. In terms of the operational expenses, it would be helpful if 57 Suffolk Street is all in with the rent. What does it cost to, heat and utilities for a 6-story plus another 2-story building every year? Like what does it cost to air condition that building? What does it cost to heat that building? What are those costs, right? The council needs to be provided with those numbers. We need to do an apples to apples comparison of the two, especially when you have an all-in option versus that. One of the questions I also wanted to ask was about tenant income. You know that obviously I'm very skeptical. It's been attributed to me in the past, and it's largely true that I'm generally skeptical in my many years here of witnessing waste, fraud, and abuse in government. One of the things that many taxpayers have said is what has gone on at 57 Suffolk Street is like a case study in waste, fraud, and abuse. And the reason taxpayers feel that is because, for example, would you rent the new Peck School? Would you rent Ian White School? Would you rent any of these spaces? No, you wouldn't do that, right? We own those buildings. Why do we own those buildings? Because they're long-term permanent arrangements. Yet, seemingly, we have seemed to rent our system office for greater than 30 years at the same location. So some of us have suggested in government that I have been a proponent of the friendly, unfriendly. I don't care if it's friendly or unfriendly. By the way, I don't think it makes a damn bit of difference, quite frankly, between a friendly and an unfriendly taking, because you're only required to show public purpose and just compensation. At the end of the day, that's what the two factors come down to, right? And as long as it's for a public purpose, they can fight over the compensation. It's clearly for a public purpose. And by the way, we'll come back to what this means as a friendly taking. What does that mean when a person is trying? It's like if someone's selling their building, it's not really a friendly taking. It's pretty well known out there that Herbie and the gang are trying to sell and get out of the real estate business, right? So does that mean friendly when your building's for sale? Is that a friendly taking? Yeah, I think that's a friendly taking. It's for sale. So, it's empty for a reason. They want to sell it. But as far as 57 Suffolk Street goes, I had suggested years and years and years ago we should have done an eminent domain taking. And, when you're paying $250,000, $300,000 plus a year, what would have been the ROI to do that 30 years ago, right? It seems like a no-brainer now. especially considering we weren't going to go anywhere. So that drives taxpayers crazy, whether it was Dick Welch, our former colleague, or others. People look at it back and they say, oh my goodness. But nevertheless, I was not in the authority to, I'm only a humble civil servant over here part-time. I don't have the capacity to order, eminent domain takings. I'm not the mayor. But nevertheless, that was the school of thought by some of us that should have been done ages ago. So one of the things that was a variable when I studied the issue quite a long time ago was the issue of rental income, right? Now, as I understand it, in the new proposal, you're going to occupy the entirety of the building, correct? That's the proposal?
We could, yes, we could, but, that's, if it is the desire of the body to say like, no, leave one floor empty, then we would have to reevaluate
There's
space
potential there, yeah.
and figure out like what floor that would be and.
Right. But the point that I'm making at is when you do this apples to apples comparisons, one of the X factors is if you rented out the remainder of 57 Suffolk Street. So that is to say, if we did a taking of 57 Suffolk Street, as could have been done years and years ago, you could have had your space for free, right? Only for the cost of the, heat and electricity, which apparently you can pay with school funds, as I've heard you say a couple minutes ago, which would have been no cost to the city, whereas rent has to be covered by the city, right? So on the other hand, there's people renting many of the floors at 57 Suffolk Street and have been for years. So we would have been the recipient of that rental income, right? So point is, has it been studied? Are we taking the right building? Okay. And should we take 57 Suffolk Street? And what would the just compensation be for that, especially if the building's in difficult condition, right? And then do we have the opportunity where you use 3 floors and we can rent out the difference? I don't know. My point is, as we dive into all of this, we got to make sure that, we could be renting out this other space to whoever, or, maybe we're meeting other needs of the city that 57 Suffolk Street could do because the annex has issues and we want to move. That was one of the other discussions, by the way, right? I'm sure you've all heard that was, it would free up some space at City Hall and in the annex by having 57 Suffolk Street because it's a much bigger building. I just want to make sure we've evaluated and considered those. And if the answer is we have, and we can see that data and we've ruled it out because A is better than B, which is better than C, okay, that's fine. I just want us to make sure we're considering all those points. ESSER funds, are they available for any of this? In terms of acquisition and renovation costs, as you know, we got $13 million we have to use between now and September 30th. Could this be a home for some of those 13 million?
Yeah, I mean, we looked at, I think right now we're just up against the clock, right? So I think at best, like if we were to take action on this soon, we would be able to go through a bid process, and like I feel like the HVAC system itself would be probably an eligible expense because it has something to do with airflow, and like I think that you can justify that. Anything else, like given some of the other projects that we've experienced, like if we wanted to do windows, which would be another eligible expense, like those things are just like, we won't get the windows in time to actually spend that money. So
is this our last year of ESSER, by the way?
This is, yeah. So
Okay.
September 30th is the last year. So I think the issue with that is timing. Like there are some things that we can do, but yeah, like I think HVAC would be the biggest thing.
And that's got to be the big ticket item, I would assume, right?
This
project?
Yeah, I mean, as Anthony, I think knows, I mean, the challenge right now with the ESSER money is that the whole market is awash in ESSER money trying to buy HVAC equipment. Awash. It's sort of hard to describe it as anything other than a tidal wave. it's really hard to buy equipment, and you're paying a lot for it, and there's nobody to install it. So, not saying you can't, you know, we're working with a couple of districts, including Holyoke, to try to figure out how to, we're working, same thing in Chicopee, same thing in Fitchburg. But it's a challenge. You know, the question that is still out there, the previous ESSER deadlines for ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 were extended to the end of the year. Right now, they seem to be holding fast to September 30th being the deadline for ESSER 3. But I still think there's a chance. But you just have to think about, like, everybody's trying to buy this equipment. We're coming off a pandemic where there are still, you know, just challenges with equipment flow.
Margaret, does the work have to be done, or could we theoretically have it ordered and purchased and paid for,
Yeah, it
even
doesn't,
if it's not
just,
installed?
the money just has to be spent.
Okay, okay.
As best I can tell,
Okay.
nobody's going to say, and was it installed on
Right,
September
right,
30th?
right,
They
right.
just want to
Okay.
see a contract
Okay.
that says the money was committed.
Okay.
But the same question's coming up all over the place.
Okay.
So.
So that's something to consider. I'll wait, I think we're gonna have a separate conversation on acquisition. Let's see here. So it would be helpful, though, to have a tenancy analysis done on, 57 Suffolk versus this building, if you could,
I mean, I don't think that would be that hard to do. I think we could look at, figure out, based on what the sort of typical rents are and look at what the area is of the building that's
Well,
currently
look, we have the
rented.
landlord saying how much he wants to raise your rent, right?
Yeah,
So it must be very valuable, according to him.
exactly.
So, okay, I'll wait till my other questions are around acquisition. Thank you.
Mayor Garcia?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to just some of the points Councilor Jordan was making, which were all very, I'm always, good points. I couldn't agree more with, you councilors in the past have brought this up for 30 years, and no action, and finally, here we are trying, here we are taking action. I think when we stepped in, we quickly jumped in trying to form a committee just to evaluate and see then, what to do next as far as next steps in this very complicated process, and then this opportunity appeared. The other thing too is, and we can go back and evaluate Suffolk. Just know that, that wouldn't, the Transition Academy wouldn't go in there, and they're looking to expand. I think they've already been talking to the owners about expanding to some empty space they had at Girls Inc., so just kind of moving over more. And so that's a potential, another lease increase right there. Also, Jane is on to talk, I don't know the terminology, friendly taking, I had to learn all these things myself. I'm not but I guess apparently there is a difference, and if you guys want, she can certainly talk about the difference and the impact that one or the other has if we were to go forward with, taking of Suffolk, why that's not necessarily considered a friendly taking versus the current proposal that's in front of you. Jane, if you're there with us still.
Attorney Mantelowski, if you, yes, she's there.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, committee, for having me. So essentially, you're looking at really the difference of potential litigation costs as it relates to a quote-unquote non-friendly taking. So for those of you who haven't experienced this before, when you have a friendly taking, essentially you have a property owner who is in agreement that you can take the property. You generally come to a consensus as to the amount of the taking, the amount that they will agree to for damages, and proceed with usually simply an order with respect to taking the property and then paying them out the agreed upon damages. With a non-consensual taking, you're looking at potentially the argument as to what are the exact amount of damages and reasonable compensation that would be due to a landowner. You are looking at legal fees for outside counsel if that needed to happen, and time. And that's a big one too, is you're looking at potentially going through a judicial process that would require, you know, it could be years before that taking would be completed if the court found that it was for a public purpose, which we're looking at here for a school department building. So I think that's a pretty much a, there's a lot of significant case law out there regarding that as a public purpose. So I wouldn't be necessarily too concerned about that. It'd really be about compensation and the amount of damages. But that could take years if that was litigated in court. So those are really the two differences between a friendly taking and a or consensual taking and a non-consensual taking.
Thank you, Jane.
You're welcome, Mayor.
Any question, Councilor Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, the city has a lot of experience with non-consensual takings. We've done those. Dean School is a good example of that. A lot of people don't realize that we did an unfriendly taking
For the land?
for the land from the Sisters of Providence, by the way, and they ultimately won, by the way, just for the record. And it was and Jane is correct. It does take many years sometimes we got the property, so you'll, as a general rule, I believe you will get the property, but you're right. It could go quite a long time over the dispute over the ultimate value, and then if you lose, you know, you have to pay accumulated interest, and in that case, the city had to pay quite a bit of accumulated interest relative to Dean.
Lose. We got the land and we built.
Well, we lost in that we said one number and they said another number, and their number ended up being a lot more closer to what ended up happening. So I call that a loss because we ended up having to write a much bigger check than we wanted to write. So the due diligence really goes into the valuation, and hopefully people can talk sense into what it is ultimately worth. You know, if somebody comes in with some crazy pie in the sky number versus otherwise. So let's talk about the numbers. We haven't put those on the table here tonight, so we should probably talk about that. I've seen one appraisal that I want to say looked like a number of around $625,000. Do you guys, I don't see that in your presentation this evening about the numbers. So acquisition, like we should start off with maybe assessed value as a baseline for each of the, say, 57 Suffolk Street versus 217, 225 High Street. What have they been appraised at, each of those, and I saw a number of 625,000 on an appraisal, but yet I see a proposal here for 850,000. So, and then I'm assuming that this property is out, whether formally or informally, for sale. Is it out on somewhere? Is that how much they're asking for the building, 850? Can you kind of walk through the numbers, please?
Yeah, so
I could just quickly say,
okay.
I believe, I want to confirm, because if not, I will make sure, and I could even email Jeffrey now if we need it, but the appraisal should have been included with the package that was submitted to the council. Did you receive that?
I did.
From Crowley? Okay, good.
That's where I got the 6.25 number.
I just wanted to make sure.
You got that?
I did.
Did we get that?
You should have.
It should have gone in with the council orders. We can certainly
one of
make
the
sure you have that. Obviously,
In one of these?
that's an important piece
I didn't see this.
for everyone to have. But you're correct, Councilor Jordan. That is what the fair market value they came up with.
Yeah, it's in here, Patty.
The building is currently for sale for $875,000, which is greater than the agreed upon, price for this friendly taking that the mayor negotiated with the executive director of the, which is Dan Knappich.
Yep.
who's the person that the mayor worked with. So I'm making little notes of documentation I know the council would like, so I want to make sure that we provide all of that.
So 875 is the sale. The number you're kicking around, you're proposing to us is 850. Appraisal came back at 6.25. Do you know what the assessed value is?
Yes, I can pull that up right now. Technically two. So even though it's one total parcel, 217, which is the standalone, it's not standalone. It's where transitions would be.
Okay.
The total assessed value right now is $207,800. 207,800
207,800 for the
Yeah.
small building.
for the small building, and then
Okay.
the large building is 223. It's technically 223 high. The full package is 217 to 225. The total value there is $1,366,100.
And also, Counselor, I think there was even a comp, right? How much did Suffolk Street sell for?
I don't have the appraisal drawn up in front of me right now, but that, I believe those comps are part of that. Suffolk Street, we, in a previous presentation, we had come in and we had estimated, based on what the price conversation was at the time, was about $1 million to buy 57 Suffolk Street. That was back in 2017, right? Roughly 2016.
That sounds right,
16,
yeah.
17 is around $1 million. The private purchase that took place a couple of years ago between the former owner and the current owner was like 650.
650.
Yeah, 650, 700. Yeah.
Love it. I love it. You just can't make that up.
You know, this is one area where I know you and I are on the same page.
That's 2 years rent. 2 years rent, everybody.
Yeah.
You're watching at home. Are you
Yeah.
paying attention?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
That's in real estate.
Yeah.
Yes. Gotta love it. Okay. Thank you for those numbers. Very helpful. So obviously you do an appraisal and you go back to Dan Knappich, who's a very honorable guy, by the way, well-respected member, especially in Westfield of the community. Everybody likes Dan Knappich, whole Knappich family, by the way. But how is it you're sitting at the table and the number comes down at 850 in the end when you're holding an appraisal in your hand? I'm assuming the assessed value obviously was, $1.5 million. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
Is
like Jane was alluding to, when it comes to these friendly takings, you come to the table, you negotiate and build a consensus so that we can go forward with a price that we're all comfortable with and continue through our process here. And so that's ultimately what happened. I mean, that's where we're at. Could we have, kept it less? Absolutely. They would have probably not accepted it, and we'd have to go forward with a non-friendly taking.
Right.
And that, this is what I mean. Like, there's just a lot of give and take and pros and cons in this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the perfect, but a good fit that's palatable and within our within the limits of what we have available, and within the time frame too. Considering what we're up against in this whole process. I wish it was something that we would have started 30 years ago for sure. But that's ultimately how we got to that number. It was just, that consensus pressed up against, these other factors that were involved in this whole process that got us here today.
Well,
'Cause the alternative is, you guys know what the alternative is, and again, like, I have no, just so you're aware too, we brought forward a potential solution, and it's, I'm probably gonna kick me for saying this, but we don't have to do this. We can stay with what we have or continue to evaluate. But just know some of the other factors that are up against that are in the very near future as far as rent increases and you know, additional space for transitions and whatnot. And again, it's not the end of the world. We can figure that out too, and potentially take over Metcalf. But you know, is it the best fit? You know, considering you know Metcalf will still have that lease at Open Square. I think the cost for renovations are there. There's no perfect solution here, but you know, just what is the path that we want to go on that's right for us.
Do you feel, Mayor, though, that this building is better for us than if we took by eminent domain 57 Suffolk Street?
When I think of like, when I think of a couple of things, one, we can eliminate 2 leases instead of 1, so there's still that transition academy.
But why can't transitions go into 57
I
Suffolk?
was told it doesn't fit. Is that not true?
It's twice the size of a building.
No, but does it fit in there?
Well, it could fit on the ground floor, you would displace.
But it's not a friendly taking,
It wouldn't be. It'll
57.
take a little more time.
right?
But
I
it's
think-
also, I think it was like an 18, no, wait, hold on, I'm sorry, give me a sec.
It could fit. I mean, you'd end up taking a little more of that space and reducing the area.
There you go.
Right.
The 18,300,000, so the renovation cost is nearly double, it's much higher.
But we
At
want
least
to plumb
from
in.
the
Yeah,
estimates.
we want to plumb into
From
that.
the
a little bit. I think
estimates.
Counselor Sullivan was getting into that.
That 18 million is based on renovating the whole 46,000 square feet.
Yeah, if we own the building, I mean, if the city owned the building, I don't think, like, that's probably what would, especially if we want to move the transitions program over there, there would be some costs associated. If we had all those floors, could the transitions department be there? I suppose, yeah,
Okay.
we would just, you know, it would need a kitchen, it would need like all the things that the program needs. And, you know, it is downtown, like the part of what we look for the transitions program is to make sure it's downtown and easily accessible to partners that we have in the area.
Interrupt Councilor Jardine.
I can wrap up, but basically, I want to just do a side-by-side because my point is 57 Suffolk Street is twice the size of this building. You could put in this other program and then have all this other space. The space that's being rented, we'd actually collect money, probably either, these are tenants who already have their space as they have it. They may not be entitled to a build out. Maybe we'd have to work it into their lease. We could probably recoup either on triple net basis or otherwise, or a build out arrangement with these tenants if they wanted to have renovation to cover those costs, as opposed to us shelling this all out, or we don't have to renovate it at all and they are there as they are there and we keep their rent the same, but now we're collecting rent offsetting for half the building. It's my only point is I want to make sure that's evaluated as a side-by-side to this. Thank you.
No, I think that's definitely included in the evaluation, and I stand corrected on that you know, moving the transitions not fitting. But also, like, we should definitely include it in the comparisons, absolutely. How realistic it is or how long it take in that process to do the taking, because I never asked him, actually, we've never talked about it, but I kind of feel like if I went to Eric and said, hey, he's gonna fight that tooth and nail or ask for some crazy,
Right, one or the other.
crazy number, kind of what happened with.
Well, how much did
with
you pay
Dean.
for it, Eric?
Hey, why don't we,
I apologize.
Kind of what
That's
happened
okay.
at Dean, and we're in a position now where we're doing a not so friendly take-in and paying much more than what we could have paid if we would have took this one.
Right.
So again, it's back to that point. It's risk here. It's a give or take, no matter what direction we go.
if I can just, I'm not sure where the Finance Committee is going to go on this or what your time limit is. If, I don't know, I don't sense that we're going to vote on this tonight unless I'm wrong. I'm wondering if maybe the best option for us to do would be to table this and have another meeting as soon as possible with only you people in, nothing else on our agenda, because we do have other people on the agenda that have been waiting, and I think it would be nicer and more efficient to just have one meeting with everybody here instead of saying, well, so-and-so's got to be here, and what, does that sound feasible?
Do you guys know what they're asking for? Are we good?
I think-
Questions for the finance committee?
Yeah, I took some notes, and
Okay.
my understanding was that the joint committee
That's right.
was also going to be wanting to discuss this.
I don't have an item on the particular to this, but I suppose we could bring it in, Rory, because
Yeah.
we do have an order in on the future use of ESSER funds.
Yep.
And how that's gonna roll out, so
And-
happy to, we could bring it up.
And then the other thing I was wondering, depending on how tonight went, was if it made sense to organize some tours of the space so that folks
is a
could
good-
walk around
that
and
is a
kind of
good
get a
idea.
sense of
Yeah.
what it is.
Send,
'Cause
send
I
that
think-
invitation to school board too, if you.
Yeah, of course, but, you know, obviously within, open meeting law and whatnot, but
Probably, yeah.
provide folks the opportunity to go through and get a real sense of the space. Because I think once you go in there and you get a sense of it, it really, Margaret's plans start to become real. And what we'd be looking to do.
The 12th work? If the 12th works for the finance committee and you people, does that work? If we
Yeah.
have it, that'll be a week from tomorrow. Are you able to gather whatever information we
What day is it?
need?
There's a
Madam Chair.
school committee meeting.
Oh, school committee meeting.
There's a DGR meeting that night as well.
Oh, okay.
We'll follow up, you just follow up.
Yeah,
Joint school committee is the
The
14th.
14th.
It doesn't have to be that soon. I mean, we could.
Monday, the 18th? Anything, Jeff? You're not available? Okay.
I could come in remote, I guess, but.
That one's open.
20th, the Wednesday, the 20th?
That's open as well.
Yeah.
That is not good for me.
Okay,
We have a full council on Tuesday, and that would be about all I
right.
could do.
The 25th, 26th, or 28th, is that like too far in the future?
We got charter on the 25th, I think. 26th.
25th, Jeff, anything?
25th is the charter, 27th is an ordinance. You've got the 26th open.
The 26th is open, that's a Tuesday.
that could work out well, because that'll give us the opportunity to also meet with the joint committee and hear any
Okay.
questions that the school committee may have, and then we could come in that evening and present, just like we did with the PEC project or anything else, make sure that we
Alright.
can get all the answers.
So that good? The
I have
26th?
one question. I think the comparison of 57 Suffolk and
can't hear
this
Mike.
building are,
I'd rather
make sense to
have
me.
it,
Metcalf is like a different order of business in terms of, and I say that because it's not an office building, so you're taking something that wasn't built as an office building, you're changing it into an office building.
Right.
It would help me in terms of sort of focusing on the questions Kevin has raised particularly, to know whether we're comparing Metcalf in this conversation.
Do you want Metcalf included?
I mean, it's not as obvious of a choice as these two, to me,
Right.
Plus, I think you could more appropriately rule out Metcalf if you are showing like you have these other uses for it as a school.
Absolutely.
Right, so I think
Yeah.
to check that box, you might want to just say, this is what we plan to do with it when it isn't going to be what it is today.
Yeah.
And then if that's already meeting that need, then it's excluded for that reason. There's a legitimate
Yeah.
purpose that you're
Yeah,
excluding it.
and I think it also, just takes like 55 people away from downtown, eating at restaurants around in the area
Yep.
that,
Yep.
so. if-
unreal, I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to say, so on the 26th of March at 6:30, the Finance Committee meeting will take place with whoever you want to be here, and it'll be for item 4, which is the $850,000, and item 5, which is the consider approving the purchase of 225 High Street. So does that seem feasible to everybody? Okay, so can I have a motion on that?
Motion to table items 4 and 5?
until the
26th?
26th of March. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you all very much, and I do think that just having us here will be much better. Did you have a question?
I didn't have a question, but I just wanted to announce that Holyoke High School Knights defeated Westwood tonight, so
Nice.
we will be moving on to the final 8 in the state tournament. It's going to be at Malden Catholic, and I'll make sure the city council and school committee and
Excellent.
we'll be sure. We're trying to get a bus to go out there because we're not going to be at home.
Right,
But I was able to catch the first half, and these
that's
kids are amazing.
that's
They
great.
sure are.
What,
Groundbreaking of PEC. You guys
Friday.
are all invited. Friday,
4 o'clock?
4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just moved it
I
today.
saw it,
'cause
yeah.
Yeah,
Looks like we're gonna get some
Because of the
rain on
rain,
Thursday,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
And it's on the little spur off of Chapin Street.
Yeah.
Because of all the rain, we're trying to keep everybody out of the mud, and that area is paved.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and also, in the future, after the building's built, you will be looking at the front door of the new school there,
Oh, interesting.
so.
okay.
Okay, interesting.
Well, thank
See
you,
you Friday
everybody,
then.
and we'll
Appreciate
see you
your work on
Friday.
that, yeah.
Bring umbrellas just in case.
And if it rains, it's okay.
Yeah,
Good things come out of rain.
we're not made out of paper.
All right, thank you very much.
That's right.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
So, oh, thank you. And
We'll see you now.
We'll see you on the 26th. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have item number 6.
Motion to take it off the table?
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, it looks like we have Sergeant Zerhide here and Chief Pratt, correct? Yes. Okay, and this is order that there be appropriated by transfer in the fiscal year 2024, $95,800 as followed, from patrolman 95,800 to register, R&M motor vehicles, 8,000, R&M buildings, 2,000, data maintenance, 13,000, printing, 2,000, supplies, other, 500, motor vehicle fuel, 37,000, motor vehicle supplies, 32,000, legal defense, 1,300, for a total of 95,800. So, Chief Pratt or Sergeant?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll take it. So, yeah, these are all expense line items that we originally requested a higher amount was cut, and this is the amount we're going to need to get to the end of the fiscal year. I can take questions on each individual one or whatever you want to know. I mean, R&M motor vehicle is basically repairs, motor vehicle repairs. The building is for basically repair and maintenance at our building, our day-to-day like cleaning costs and that kind of stuff. Data maintenance is all our contracts to run everything we have. Printing is just that, printing different things. You have to look at the line item there to see exactly what, but supplies, other would be stuff like our Comcast, our water bill, other minor things. The motor vehicle fuel is our fuel bill, which we just got some updates there. So taking the average of what we're paying and trying to figure out to get to the end of the year, this is what we're going to need to get to the end of the fiscal year based on what we're getting from the DPW. And motor vehicle supplies are more like the auto parts, the brakes, the exhaust, wipers, anything you can think of motor vehicle parts is mainly from their tires as well. And then the legal defense fund is a contractual obligation that the city entered into with the Patrolmen's Union to pick up half the cost of the legal defense fund for officers. So that is what we need based on what we know for the people that have signed up to get to the end of the year. Officers just, don't have to sign up. If they don't, then obviously the city doesn't have to pay that other half. So that's where we're at. I think I want to break it down, for R&M motor vehicles, it's 8,000. R&M building is 2,000. Data maintenance is 13,000. Printing is 2. Supplies is just 500. Motor vehicle fuel is 37,000, and motor vehicle supplies 32,000. And the legal defense fund is 1,300.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Counselor Jordan?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I have just one question, Chief, and it's more about where the money's coming from. I see that you have about 96,000 extra in the patrol account, officers. Now, as you know, these were some of the funds that we gave to hire extra police officers. As you know, some of us took a tough vote a couple of months ago regarding the Ezekiel plan, and some of us had suggested that we've had a lot of money in these lines to add police officers. Some of us strongly support the full complement of police officers. And here again, the funds that we put aside to hire police officers are now not being used to hire police officers. So the question is, why aren't we hiring more police officers? And why do we have these big surpluses in the police officer lines? And doesn't it kind of prove the point earlier that was made by some of us that why don't we spend these monies on hiring people versus giving another umpteen million more when we're not even using the money that was already allocated for police officers? I'd be interested in your thoughts on that, please.
Okay. Yeah, that's really simple. Some of the money from the patrolman's line item is based on grants. Patrolman's salary is being picked up on grants. The other part of that is, yes, we're budgeting to fully fund our police department, but as you know, as we hire police officers, they don't necessarily always make it out of the academy, so they become vacancies. The time in between is what ultimately, when we lose officers, and as well as officers leaving us for other reasons, that's what creates the shortage. It's not because we're not hiring or we're not trying to hire. We currently have our staffing level is at 85. We're trying to get to 95. We have an academy coming up in May, which we fully intend on putting 10 people in. But in these interims, I don't hire the people months before the academy. That's where the surplus comes from. So I think if you didn't fund that money to hire, we would never even be able to get off the ground because we wouldn't be able to go forward and hire. It's a process. It takes time. And like I said, there's also grant funding that's involved here as well that, there are grants in the beginning of the year. We fund the position and then the grant picks up the cost of that salary. That is some of the surplus as well. So I'm not sure I completely agree with your interpretation of it, but that's where the surplus comes from. That's where I have the surplus currently as I look now that we're in March and I can start to see towards the end of the fiscal year when the academy starts what I'm going to need in May to hire these people as opposed to now. That's kind of basically how it all unfolds. And so when I see the surplus there, I feel like that's the safest place to move it from within money that was already appropriate at the beginning of the year.
I guess the reason I bring it up, Chief, is not that you and I are on the same page, because we are. We both want 95 officers. What I was suggesting to you is, and some of us from a couple months ago were making the point, you're only at 85. You budgeted for 95. It was going to be mission impossible to fill the 10 between now and June 30th. And yet there was a request to add umpteen more. And we can't even get to 95 between now and June 30th. So the point that I was trying to make, and I think has been illustrated here, is you're at 85 today, right? You're not at 90. You're nowhere near 95. And we put in the budget 95. So we hope some point, some date, you'll get to 95, because that also impacts us on overtime. But I just wanted to point out, how realistic was it really, now that we have the hindsight of a couple more months, and we're 10 short of what we had already budgeted to add 7 to 12 more? I just wanted to point that out to you.
Right, I think, but you have to take into account that we lost probably 6 of those officers to the academy. So, you know, if those 6 don't fail out of the academy, you know, we're only 4 down right now. So, I mean, I don't want to say it was unrealistic, but it's the system we have to work within. So
Chief.
that's how I.
Mayor Garcia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And mark me if I'm wrong, but I think we're kind of sort of at the target where we intended when we put this plan together. So we budgeted for 95 to cast the net. So before we were where, 92, I think, or 90, I can't remember. And so we were always 4 or 5 less from that number.
Right now, we're 10 less.
So now we're 10 less. Well, there's 4 that are coming out, and that's the challenge, right? Like, how much did we send into the academy, Chief?
Well, those 4 that are in the academy are counted in the 85.
No, when we sent officers to the
6.
academy, 6, and then there's 4 that made it, so 2 came out, and then you couple that with people leaving or people, you know what I mean? So those are the challenges we're up against when trying to hit this moving target. But when we budgeted for that 95, it cast that net a little wider, and we've been trying to brainstorm ideas and how we can cast the net even a little more wider to help us get us closer to the 95. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that when we go through our budget sessions. So again, I hate to use the word creative a lot, but just another creative idea to get us closer. But and then, you know, right when you think you're getting some momentum, surprise, you know, it takes about a year before new officers can start the gig. But I think that although we budgeted for 95, we knew that we weren't going to hit that 95 number, but try to get as close as we can to it, considering the things that are involved. So,
I don't know if there's any other questions, Madam Chair, but
Any other questions?
I'll make a motion to be approved if there's no other questions.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. All right, so that passes. All right, thank you. And the next item, 7, this is for the Mass State Police Project Safe Neighborhoods, $40,000 no-match grant, and authorizes the establishment of a fund, et cetera.
Motion to take it off the table.
Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Sergeant?
I got this.
Oh, you got that one too, okay.
Don, just in case there's any technical questions about the grant itself, but I can basically run it down. It's similar to the one we've had in the past. It's a collaboration grant with the Mass State Police for $40,000 no match, and for us, it's going to be used to fund more Safe Street operations that will work in collaboration with the state police. It's a reimbursable grant, so we would, do the overtime and then it would be reimbursed by the state. This is through EOPS.
And also, I'm reading that this grant is intended to support interagency cooperation and collaboration and target violent crime within the city of Holyoke.
Correct.
Any questions, the chief?
When we say we're targeting violent crime, what does that mean? Like maybe 1 or 2 examples of what we're doing to target violent crime with these dollars? Like, what would be an example of that?
The crimes like drug offenses, gun offenses.
No, but like, what type of things do we do? Is it like where it's like extra overtime money to like surveil bad guys?
Safe Street operations that you've seen, like the one we
Okay.
just did.
Okay.
Okay. That's a prime example of how we would use the money.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Motion to approve?
Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, so that's been approved. Thank you. And let's see where we are now. Okay, Counselor Rivera is not here. I don't see him on Zoom anywhere, so I certainly can take this up if that's your pleasure. And the other thing too is I do want to, maybe we can take up, before we do quickly with Counselor Rivera's thing, is take up item 11, which is a grant, the fiscal year 23 TDI equity grant. I would listen for a motion to return that to the auditor since she's here.
Okay, motion to take item 11, is that off the table?
Yes,
And return it to the auditor?
yes.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Okay, thank you. What is your pleasure for the other items, 8, 9, and 10, which are from Counselor Rivera, who's not here, or on Zoom?
You want to take them up as a package, or?
Whatever your pleasure is fine.
I think we could take 8 and 9 as a package.
So moved.
Okay, so a motion to take up item 8 and 9. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Chief, item 8 is that the city council be provided with a report of retirement payouts for the police department for the last 20 years, and I know we've received that. And item 9 is that the police department responds to Counselor Israel Rivera's order asking for a report of payouts for the police department from the last 20 years. He doesn't say retirement payout, so I'm not sure if it's the same thing, but anyways, those are the two items that we're talking about.
Okay, I guess my response would be that, these are the last 20 years of contractual, payouts to employees once they separate from the, department.
I did have one question.
I see them as, kind of two ways. They're a buyout at the end of someone's career for their time that they didn't use while they were here. If all this time was used while they were here, it probably would have resulted in a lot of overtime costs, which is, I know, what was a problem in the past. So I don't know exactly what else to respond to other than that they're contractual, and I when people separate, I have to pay them for their time before they leave.
Counselor Jordan has a question?
Yeah, let's see. In terms of the last, on item 10, excuse me. No,
Yeah,
this
we
would
are
be
doing
actually 9. I apologize. 9 has the past 20 years. Is there a reason 2023 wasn't included in that? Is it?
I didn't provide it. I don't know where you all got it from, but that wasn't provided by the police department. I think it was provided by somewhere else.
Oh, I see.
I think at the time when it might have been requested, maybe that, I don't know. I got the same one you got eventually. I see
Okay.
that it stopped too, so.
Because it says in here that from the HPD response to Counselor Israel Rivera's order asking for a report of payouts for the police department from the past 20 years. So it made it inferred based on the agenda. It says from the Holyoke Police Department. So that inferred to me that it came from your office.
Oh, yeah, see, the way I read that was it asked for a response to Counselor Rivera's order, because the order prior to that is for the 20 years. So I thought I was responding to what the list says. That's what that might be my mistake, but that's the way I read it. Like, the first order was him asking for the list, and the second order was asking what my response to that was, like the
Oh, I see.
explanation. That's how I read it, but I might have misread it. Now that you read it the way you said, now I kind of see maybe I should have done it the other way. I don't know.
Oh, that's fine. But could we get 2023 too? Because we have like the last year missing on the report. That would be kind of helpful. You know? That would be from whoever, I don't know, auditor or whoever provided this to us. Jeffrey, maybe, could you follow up with whomever? Treasurer's office? Okay. Yeah, because.
Looking at where it came from, I do see the email was actually sent by Tanya when I got the report.
Okay, so the treasurer gave it to you, Tanya, and you gave it? Okay, all right, so yeah, if we could get 23, that would be nice. Hopefully that's available. Maybe it wasn't available yet, but I know there's one in there in particular I'm sure some people have interest in. But I guess my angle Council Rivera has his reasons for asking for this, but mine was kind of looking at this from a budget perspective. Now that this type of analysis has been done, does this inform how we budget going forward in terms of how does this jive with what we've been putting aside for buyouts and buybacks? And does this seem, does this make sense to us? Because, you got some years here, like 2022 was pretty low. 21 was very high. You had some people who, had some big numbers here. 106,000 was one check, 105,000 was another check. Obviously you could really go back over the years, but at some point you go back too far, it doesn't really become as relevant anymore because you almost have to mark it up for inflation. Because, somebody getting paid 20 years ago versus today, it's a big difference in pay rate. But I'm just kind of curious, does this make sense, Mayor? I don't know if you've seen this or not, like in terms of how we're budgeting for these numbers. I mean, we don't really typically see too many transfers coming to us because we undershot the buyback budget lines. So,
If I could just interrupt you
Sure.
for a second. Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't a police officer have to give you a year's notice if they're thinking about retirement or some type of notice?
No,
They
they
don't?
do not. No.
Oh, I thought they used to.
What we typically do, just to answer Kevin's question, and what I've seen, and I think Kevin's right, I think we've been pretty accurate to the most part. What we do is look at the people that are eligible to retire in that next fiscal year and then put that forward. And that usually ends up taking a couple cuts, one from the mayor and one from city council, and we get to a number. And, if we're good, we usually make it through the year with that. If we don't, we would have to come back because they're contractual. They do have to give me a 90-day notice
Okay.
if they expect to get that money in the budget year. We typically, it's not usually a big secret if someone's retiring.
Right.
So we usually have a pretty general idea of who is retiring, who isn't, and then we can kind of budget that accordingly when we bring it forward to the mayor with the budget.
Okay.
okay, that's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this one?
Motion that's
Okay.
been complied with?
Item 8 and 9?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so moved. Okay, and then the next item, last item is item 10, ordered that the Honorable City Council ask the Police Department to provide us with an itemized budget breakdown of dollars received and expended over the last 5 years from the criminal seizure and forfeiture account. Move we take it off the table.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Is this a report that is accompanied from a letter from the chief providing a formal representation regarding the maintenance and utilization of forfeiture accounts? Is that,
That's correct. I
Okay.
think I sent.
so we all have a letter going into this. If you'd like to explain a little bit on your letter, that may be helpful, because I'm assuming that this letter will be provided to the full city council on Wednesday, if not sooner.
Okay, I think I've had it forwarded to Jeffrey to distribute to all the counselors.
Okay,
In the letter, I just went over basically what a general overview of what the accounts are about and what laws and guidances dictate how we use them. And then I did a 5-year look back in each. There's 2 separate accounts. One is we call it the state forfeiture account, and the other one is the federal forfeiture account. The rules around them are pretty similar, and I felt it was important to note that these funds are not to be, as you'll read by general law, is not to be like supplanted to offset your budget, because then they can actually come, especially in the Fed account, if you were to do that, they could come and take those funds back.
Okay.
So we have to just be diligent about the way we use it. I try to stick to, as I said in the letter, I like to stick to, at least since I've been chief, is training, equipment, and offset the cost of investigations. I feel like if I stay in that realm, then you know we'll be good as far as how we're utilizing the money. I did go back. I didn't see anything, at least in the 5 years. So that wasn't just that as well. I don't know how far back I could go here, but I can look. But it appears that seems to be the trend. We use it for training, for equipment, and for offsetting investigations.
Okay. Questions? Anybody?
Yeah.
Counsel-
Go ahead, I'll wait, yep.
So, my first question, Chief, is on the federal fund, which is accounting code 8820. For 24, there's no monies coming in at all and no expenditures at all for 24. So in the last 8 months, by this report, nothing's come in and gone out, but in checking with the auditor, 22,000 has come in and 16,000 has gone out. So there's something missing on the accounting end of it. And it just appears to me that looking at the previous years, the bulk of it is all going into payroll. So those, I guess that'd be the start of the questions.
What's the question? I don't know what I'm.
Well, why the discrepancy between this report and what the treasurer has? There's 22,000 went into the account, but this is showing nothing going in 24, and it shows 16,000. I'm not sorry, not the treasurer, the auditor, and 16,000 going out.
I don't know. You'd probably have to ask the auditor. We didn't get that money here.
Okay.
I know exactly what you're saying. For all of 24, we did not receive any federal forfeiture money.
Okay, that's probably why it's not there.
Could I ask the auditor to
Yes.
address this? Thanks.
I just want to say that maybe there was a receipt that was misposted. So I can definitely take a look into that for you.
All right, because you are showing 22,000 coming in, right?
I am, yep.
All right, and 16,000 going out
Yep.
of that same
I
account.
can share it with the chief too.
All right,
And then, like, if there is a discrepancy and it needs to be reconciled, then I'm happy to do that as well, so.
all right. And also on the deposits, there is interest that is collected not only on this account, but on the third account that isn't one we understand you can't spend out of it. But there's, I believe, close to $800,000, $780,000, and the interest in that account by state law could be going to the general fund, but I believe it's being plowed back into this. Question for the auditor, am I correct on that?
So with the interest, if the city chooses for the, for that interest to go into that, that fund, then that is okay. But there's no interest for the funds he's talking about, which is the federal and the state.
Correct.
Their local option choice. I can look into it. Usually the interest is taken care of by the treasurer's office, but normally you get DLS guidance on what you can and cannot do with the interest of any particular fund. But I can take a look at that for you.
Right, but on that particular third fund, the one that has a 700, what is it now, 780,000?
Yeah, 780.
That is interest bearing.
I don't do the bank account, so it looks to me like they're posting interest to this fund. So I would say it is somewhere in an interest-bearing account. Yes.
All right.
Now, whether that interest, that's way before probably my time. But if they made that decision to put the interest in that account, then that was what they chose at the time, but it can always be reevaluated, and you can take a look at your interest policy for that particular account, and you can put it into the general fund if you like, if it's allowable.
Okay, so we'll need further clarification on that.
Sure.
Probably not through you, Chief, I guess through the treasurer
Yeah, no, that's
office or
fine.
through the
I can
auditor's office.
I'll scoot out an email. I'm sure he'll know.
All right,
Counselor Jordan, or unless you're done.
yep.
Oh, okay. Can you just kind of walk me, Mike, either that or the auditor, what you're saying? You said that there's a balance in the account of $780,000, because these reports that we're seeing from the police department, those numbers don't come up anywhere near that amount.
I can clarify. There's a third account. This is the money that, so the $780,000 one is held until it clears the courts. And then it can be transferred and broken down and distributed. Not all of it goes to the city of Hoyoke. Am I right on that, Chief?
And is this in the paperwork we have?
That's correct. Think of that account as like evidence. All the evidence that comes in goes into that account pending court proceeding. I don't have any access to that.
So you guys do a raid and you nail some drug dealer who's got a ton of money, say he's got 150 grand or something. You would take the money and it would sit in that account until his trial or whatever, and say he's found guilty and he has to agree to surrender the money, at which point that now gets divvied up to all the local different PDs or back to the state? Is that how it, because one of my questions where I'm going is, how is it determined what we get? So can you kind of walk us through the funds flow just to educate us? And I know we have newer members too, and we haven't talked about this in quite a number of years, so it'd be helpful to me too as a refresher.
So the way that works is the case will, ultimately settle through court proceedings, however long that takes, at which time it's ordered forfeited by a judge of a certain court. That goes back to the DA's office. The DA's office compiles a list for us that will ultimately come up here with the cases that have been forfeited. We then research those cases, pull the cases, figure out the money end of it. It goes back to the DA's office, and then the DA actually divvies up those portions back. We don't determine what we get. There's different formulas for different cases based on how many agencies are involved. I believe the DA's office gets half right out of the gate, and then the other half gets distributed amongst the other agencies involved.
Okay.
So if you had a case that was 150,000, 75 of that would go right to the DA, and then the 75 that's left would get divvied up amongst the other departments that participated.
Oh, okay. So in this situation, it's if you're participating, say it was the state police and the Hoyoke police were involved in a particular case, that maybe theoretically like half would go to the state police of the half that is going to the police department, and half would go to HPD, theoretically, like.
Yeah, the state police sort of fall under the DA's office, so that would probably be part of that portion. It would be more like we did a case and the state police were involved, and maybe the Chicopee police and the West Springfield police and, other local police departments that were involved in that particular case would divvy up, and that's at the discretion of the DA, who is considered. I mean, obviously, if it's in your town, you're one of the members right out of the gate, and then the other agencies that participated.
So if you're in, say, obviously Holyoke, we have, it's sort of, we don't want drug activity, Lord knows, but we happen to have it come into our community, so we end up participating in these prosecutions, and therefore we get some of the money to defray our costs. Whereas if you're Huntington, Mass, and you might get one drug case in 10 years, you probably aren't getting much forfeiture money then, right? It's not like it goes into one central pot and then is distributed by population. It's basically you're getting a piece of the cases you're involved in. Basically, that's how the formula works, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, my other question from a budget perspective is, when you're considering your training budget, or you're considering, your security expenses, or you're considering the amount of money that you spend on overtime for different investigations and things, is the amount of money that you request in the budget less because you have the availability of these dollars? Or is it that you request the full amount in the budget and somehow we have these other dollars that are offline? Because when we talk in the budget process, we talk a lot about the grants that the department gets. We don't often talk about the average amount of forfeiture dollars that are netted to the city per year. I think it might be helpful when we do your budget hearing if you prepare, the average amount of these forfeiture dollars, the average amount of grants, like what you're reasonably expecting from a revenue side, so that we can get a full grasp of the real cost of running the department, because if we're only budgeting 13 million, but you're getting another 2 million of other money, say, the real operational costs are 15 million, but the city's contributing 13. Or is it we're spending 13, but the taxpayers of Holyoke are really only paying 11 because of these other two? So I just want to make sure that we're really watching our funds flow in terms of true cost to the city, like how the budget of the police department is paid for. This much with grants, this much with forfeiture funds, this much with tax money. And kind of, if we could break it out at the budget hearing, that might be a good education for us all. If you could put that together for say, when you come in like May or so, that would be helpful.
Okay.
I'm all set, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Let's see what I can do.
He's on Zoom. So Councilor Rivera, if you'd like to talk about this item 10, we've already done
Microphone.
8 and 9.
Microphone.
And that those were complied with, so we're on item 10.
Madam,
You're on mute.
your microphone.
I can't hear anything, Patty. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I didn't have my microphone on. We're on item 10 of yours, talking about the police department to provide us with an itemized budget breakdown of dollars received and expended over the last 5 years from criminal seizure and forfeiture account. We've also taken up item 8 and 9, and those were complied with. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask the chief, go right ahead. And just put your microphone on. There we go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At first, I want to say thank you for taking up the orders that I filed. I hope you guys are having a great night. Sorry I came late. I was watching Holyoke High play the last play in the playoffs. They won.
We heard.
Great win. It was awesome. But yeah. So my question around this particular item on 10, I'm not going to speak of the other ones because you guys already kind of went through it, and I'm not on the committee to go back. So what we'll do is pretty much focus on this one here. And then for me, I guess it's when I requested like the 5-year breakdown, I kind of like expected different budgets for each year, right? So that way it would be easier to kind of view what we're looking at and what we're looking for from the beginning. So there's inputs and then there's outputs. And that makes it easy when you say FY21, this is the inputs, these are the outputs. FY22, these are the inputs, these are the outputs, right? FY23, and then as you go on, right? Because then we can see patterns, we can see averages. It makes things a little easier. Here, I struggle to see some of that because for me, everything is bunched on one sheet. And because everything is, I honestly, I'm having a hard time reading the budget sheet without like bouncing around. And like the bouncing around kind of scares me because I've never seen like budgets managed like that, especially over time. Or maybe the way you pulled it out just like as an accumulation all at once. But because they weren't kind of like parsed out by year, makes it a little difficult to kind of actually decipher what's happening throughout the 5 years, right? So I don't know if you answered this question or you said, what do we have now as a total amount in the account, Chief?
Right, so in the state account, we have $28,009.65. In the federal account, I believe we have $103.09. So those budgets that like what you're talking about, just so you know, these are fiscal year. That's the way we track it here. And so I went back 5 fiscal years. And
No, FY stands for fiscal year. That's why I said FY21, FY22.
at the top of the sheet, there's a starting balance, and then it just goes down as things are expended, or if there's a deposit from forfeiture, it's listed, or in some of the cases, a reimbursement from the state. So that's the way we track it. So I have a general, so I know what's in those accounts.
So,
and then we could help the auditor if we need to, as she has mentioned.
I mean, all right. Only because I've never seen a budget get tracked like that. If it's a fiscal year, it's 1 year, and then it closes out, and then you got another year, and then you go again, and you close it out, and then you got another year. So that way it's all separated, so you're not kind of getting confused, mixing things in by years. But if that's the way you manage it and it makes sense to you, then I guess.
Over this account doesn't end in a fiscal year; it carries over.
No, I understand that, but there has to be somewhat of a system that you got to kind of go through. But it seems like you have one, and it's fine. I'm sorry. So the other piece too that I saw that in the letter, it stated something about with the funding. We're not supposed to ideally the funding is to supplement, right? Not to say if we're gonna take away 10,000 because we know you got 10,000 there to do something else. That's not the intention of the account, right? That's not. I don't feel that's what we're doing here, but I just think that for me, it's kind of understanding, as kind of Councilor Jourdain had mentioned previously, understanding the flow of things, right? How things are moving and how things are going in and how things are coming out and how it's benefiting the city. Because overall, it gives us a real number and a real situation of what we're really dealing with. Like we get a real grasp of what the costs are, what the impacts are, where the money is going back in. And then to the point of Councilor Sullivan, where there's another account with money just sitting there, I do get that it gets broken up. I think, though, there are situations where if we knew what the formula was and how to kind of like play the game, we might be able to advocate through the DA for a little bit more funding because of how much situations we got going on in our communities, more or less, right? So it would be hard for me to believe that there aren't Holyoke detectives working in other communities as well where there's busts happening. And when there is, it's like, are we getting our fair share of that? Because we're technically putting in taxpayer dollars in another community to do policing. So like, it's kind of like trying to see that and understand that all at the same time. So I really appreciate you coming to us in addressing this, and pretty much taking the time to try to explain and elaborate as best as you can. Thank you.
Before I forget, I meant to say that President Tessa Murphy-Ramboletti is also on Zoom, so anybody else have questions? Counselor Sullivan?
Yeah, so just, I'm going to request just that we leave this tabled for now, because I'd like to see some answers come back from the auditor's office as well. And Counselor Rivera makes a good point about what goes on in the other cities also. We're holding this account, but what is our share that we get in from the other cities? Because I'm looking at the federal piece of it, and in fiscal year 2020, we received $4,000, a little over $4,000. We received absolutely nothing in 21, not a dime. Nothing in 22. 23 was pretty good, and more than 50% of it, 60% of it went back out in payroll as the expense. And then in 24, we've received nothing, spent nothing, but we have the discrepancy from the treasurer's office or the auditor's office. So I'd kind of like those looked into. And then there is the question of where the interest goes. I'd like an answer on that also, on that, the main account that's holding the $780,000. Is that interest going back into the state fund? It's not showing up in the federal fund. There's no line items for it. Is it going into the general fund? I'd like, if nobody else has any questions, I'd make a motion to table.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor to table?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so moved. Thank you
Nice
very much,
evening.
everyone, for attending, and did a good job.